Million National Youth Service scandal have been arraigned in Nairobi. The suspects, who included Youth Affairs Principal Secretary Lillian Omolo, were brought to the Milimani Law Courts in 8 vehicles, 3 Land Rovers and 5 Subarus. Others were NYS Director General Richard Ndubai and managers of suspected phony companies that were used to swindle the public. They were dragged to court from the various police stations in the capital, Nairobi, where they spent the night. The suspects are still taking plea at the Milimani Law Courts at this hour. Let's now bring in our political affairs reporter, Jeff Kirui, who is still on this story. Jeff, good evening. What do we know so far?
Well, a very good evening, Ben. Indeed, as we speak right now, they are the last stages of taking plea. All the suspects which have been arraigned before Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti are taking plea on the 10 counts of charges, which are expected actually to take plea, whether guilty or not guilty. Of course, there are other determinations expected to be made this evening regarding the 13 absent suspects who are expected today. Remember, there were a total of 33 of them, but 20 appeared in court. 13 of them could not make it to court. And their lawyers are arguing that they had intention to appear in court. That is why they sent their representatives. But of course, the prosecution side is saying that requesting the chief magistrate to rule that those who are absent should actually, warrant of arrest should be declared on them. And also another major ruling which is expected is on the bail, whether they will be released on bail or not. Those are some of the determination and rulings which are expected in the next few minutes, putting into consideration that the taking of plea stage is almost over. All the suspects have actually pleaded not guilty. Remember, the main suspects, that is the top bosses of NYS, Lillian Bogo, Richard Ndubai, of course, are appearing in almost all those charges which have been pressed or preferred against them. And we'll wait to see whether they'll be granted bail. Of course, with their lawyers having argued that they've been in custody for now, from yesterday to today, and they are requesting that they be granted that bail to go home to their families. And of course, we will wait for that, as well as whether the 13 will actually, a warrant of arrest will be directed upon them. Ben.
Jeff, the judge is seemingly burning the midnight oil there. Do we have an idea of when this, up to when this is expected to continue?
Well, from the earlier directive which was given by Magistrate Ogoti was that he had commitments tomorrow. That is why they had to burn the midnight oil to make sure that they are done with these particular suspects, the taking plea stage before tomorrow. But of course, any minute from now, the determination will be given regarding the two issues which I raised, that one regarding, of course, the bail as well as the warrant of arrest. The moment those determination rulings have been given, and then it will be, of course, we'll be closing business for today as we wait for more suspects after information that yesterday there were more suspects which were arrested and are in custody. We are yet to know when the hearing of these cases will begin, of course, based on the directives which we will receive after this particular session led by Chief Magistrate of Anti-Corruption Court, that is Douglas Ogoti. Ben.
Thank you, Jeff Kirui. They are live at the Milimani Law Courts here in Nairobi. Now, in the continued purge against graft, the Central Bank of Kenya is now taking charge to clean up the improprieties that could have been committed by commercial banks acting as conduits to theft in public institutions. CBK, in collaboration with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, have launched an audit on banks that could have been involved in the multi-billion shillings NYS scam. Although he declined to mention the banks involved, CBK Governor Patrick Njoroge says that they are taking a two-pronged approach, with the first phase of the investigations aimed at recovering money that could have been lost, while phase 2 involves probing banks and other institutions who may have been found culpable.
Preliminary findings into the 9 billion shillings fraud claims at the National Youth Service, according to police accounts, show that some local banks were used as a conduit, raising the red flag as to whether commercial banks involved reported any suspicious transactions to the CBK, and if so, what action the regulator took to stem the payments. Responding on the issue, CBK Governor Dr. Patrick Njoroge confirmed that indeed some banks were involved in the scam and are already being investigated.
I think you should all be aware that the investigations that are taking place, I mean, it is important that we give the investigators space. Let's not anticipate. Let's not anticipate. I think it would be terrible to kind of spring the suspects, right? Just like that.
In what he described as an attack on the mandate of CBK, Dr. Njoroge noted that Financial Markets Conduct Bill 2018 being prepared by the National Treasury is ill-advised and is not cleared towards resolving the interest rates cap quagmire. According to him, the bill is passed into law could strip the CBK powers to, among others, deal with reckless lending by banks, put banks under receivership, as well as kill certain provisions under the Banking Act, such as banks' approval fees, charges, and other prudential guidelines.
I guess we've discussed this before. The perverse outcome is as follows, or rather, what is the usual outcome? When we say we want to have an accommodative monetary policy, what that means is you generally lower interest rates. You lower interest rates, that generally is supposed to lead to increase in credit in the system, and that would lead to pushing up GDP and hence the accommodation. That's the regular transmission. However, given the caps, we are unsure that that is what will happen. You may end up lowering rates like we did 2 months ago, but that does not lead to an increase. Rather, it leads to a decrease in credit.
The governor further noted that they are working with 4 local banks to help come up with innovative ways of adopting cryptocurrencies in the country. Julie Owino, KTN News.
Still on Graft Watch, a group of irate youth earlier today stormed the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, demanding for the resignation of its chairman and CEO over the reported misappropriation of 10 million shillings in 2016. Caroline B has those details.
The youth are demanding for the immediate resignation of Youth Fund CEO Josiah Moriasi and Chairman Ronnie Osumba over alleged dubious payments of over 10 million shillings to 4 youth groups, a scandal that hit the Youth Fund in 2016. They have threatened to constantly stage demos at the Youth Fund office until the two resign, adding that they will mobilize youth to petition the president to disband the fund.
We welcome holding public officers accountable. We have had a long session with them. They have expressed their concerns around the NYS scandal, around the alleged youth fund scandal.
The president has been talking about empowering the young people, and it has been a statement that is not taken seriously.
And yet, people are here masquerading as youth leaders, squandering the money that is meant to develop and to empower our youths.
In his defense, Ronnie Osumba says when they discovered the discrepancies, they invited detectives from DCI and a special audit team from the National Treasury for a self-probe. Osumba says he will only resign if the findings of the audit implicate him.
And we have said, and we have committed to them, if we are implicated, we'll resign.
If the DCI report implicates myself as part of the mess, I want to promise you that I resign. Sisi ndio tumedetect ukora. Hatujaka kwa hiyo ofisi kwa muda mrefu.
So far, 7 senior officials have been suspended to pave way for investigations. The officers are being investigated on how 4 youth groups received 10 million shillings, suspicious dealings that were discovered in an internal audit for the 2016-2017 financial year. It's not the first time the Youth Fund has been shoved into the limelight over graft. In 2015, the then CEO, the late Catherine Namuye, was suspended after the banking fraud unit signaled suspicious transactions that were brought to the attention of the board. In 2016, the then Youth Fund chairman, Bruce Odhiambo, resigned over loss of 180 million shillings. The two had been accused of acquiring 4.5 million and 1.8 million shillings through questionable means, money believed to have been siphoned from the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. A report from the Treasury over the dubious payment is expected in a week's time, while the DCI report will be ready in 2 weeks. The country has been hit by several reports of corruption scandals and misuse of funds in certain governmental bodies. Caroline B., KTN News.
Let's stay with these stories, shall we? The new Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, has hit the ground running by prosecuting top officials on the National Youth Service scandal. Prosecutions come as the Office of the DPP is facing unique challenges, including lack of adequate personnel. Will the latest crackdown on graft be just another case of smoke and mirrors? Our investigative reporter Hussein Mohammed spoke exclusively to the former spy, who is now the new DPP.
This was his first major press conference, putting face to a multi-agency day-long operation to crack down on suspected looters at the National Youth Service. The new Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, spells out the charges to be preferred on those suspected to be behind the latest episode of graft diaries in Kenya. But will this be a story of same script, different cast?
With time, you will see the difference.
December 2017, his predecessor, Keriako Tobiko, hit a hurdle on the prosecutions of the graft scams in Kenya. The former Deputy Director of National Intelligence Service comes in at a time when the wave of corruption is crashing on the shores of his office.
It's definitely a burden that I take very seriously. And that's why you see we were working overnight on Saturday and even Sunday. We gave the constant Sunday night, and some of the arrests were done waking up Monday early in the morning, the wee hours.
The former Deputy Director of National Intelligence Service comes in at a time when the wave of corruption is crashing on the shores of his office.
One of the problems that we have is we are understaffed here. We have lost a lot of officers to better paying institutions like the judiciary. Like the EACC.
With his entry piling up from the NYS scandal to the Kenya Power Bill hike to the maize scandal, what is the DPP strategy?
We will table the evidence. And I hope and pray that the media will cover the whole process.
The recent case of former town clerk John Kakuo and former local government PA Sami Kui, where they were jailed for 3 years, is one of the cases that was seen as a beacon for more arrests. The DPP's hot seat has seen different persons change the prosecution path in Kenya. In 1996, former Chief Justice Balanchunga was the former President Moi first appointee. In 1999, a senior magistrate Unita Pamela Kidula was appointed, and she would face the Goldenberg case with Kamlesh Patni on the stand. 4 years later, Philip Mugo will be named the DPP, and he will be tested with the Anglo-leasing scandal, among other high-profile cases. Haji's predecessor, Keriako Tobiko, began his term in office amid tension with the former Anti-Corruption Commission, KACC. Haji steps in at a time when Kenya's promising basket of wealth has been looted and deflated.
We passed a law in 2003, the Anti-Corruption Law, Prevention of Corruption Act, which mandates courts to conduct criminal cases continuously without adjournment.
For most Kenyans, it's a case of cautious optimism that the new prosecutor-in-chief will turn the chapter in Kenya's fight against graft. Hussein Mohammed, KTN News, Nairobi.
As the country chokes with a wave of multi-billion shilling corruption scandals, President Uhuru Kenyatta chaired a special cabinet session Tuesday and approved a write-off of principal loans given to various public entities totaling to 2.9 billion and a waiver of accrued interest relating to non-performing loans. This comes as the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Mwangi Kiunjuri, is scheduled to appear before the National Assembly's Agriculture Committee to explain suspicious payments of some 1.9 billion shillings to maize cartels. Our senior parliamentary reporter Patrick Amimo has more from the House.
Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mwangi Kiunjuri was scheduled to appear before the National Assembly's Agriculture Committee to explain the rot in some of the departments and agencies under his docket. Kiunjuri asked Parliament to postpone the date since he was attending a special cabinet meeting chaired by President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House, Nairobi. The latest scandal to hit the Minister of Agriculture involves the suspicious payments by the National Cereals and Produce Board of 1.9 billion shillings to middlemen at the expense of genuine maize farmers. A section of leaders from the maize-producing counties in North Rift and South Rift have called for Kiunjuri to resign over the maize and fertilizer scandals at his ministry. But Kiunjuri says he's being targeted by those against his efforts to clean the NCPB and rid of cartels in the ministry. Kiunjuri will now appear before Parliament Wednesday to explain the latest scandals.
Come and tell us what is going on in NCPB, what is going on with the maize import, what is going on with the fertilizer and the maize farmers who have not been paid. Because we continue to provide money in the budget and that is being slashed. The MD for National Cereals and Produce Board, he has resigned on a Sunday. We want to know why he did it on a Sunday. Was he under pressure of sorts, and who is behind that?
In the past, some cabinet secretaries have failed to honor invites from parliamentary committees to answer to weighty matters.
We are not going to settle for anything short of the CS. We want to interrogate the CS, not the PS, not the CAS, but Honorable Mwangi Kiunjuri himself. And we want also to urge Mheshimiwa Honorable Charles Keter and Silas Tiren to also come and tell the committee what it is that they know.
Even as Kenyans are dazzled by the corruption scandals and poor management of funds, a special cabinet meeting Tuesday approved a write-off of principal loans amounting to 2.9 billion shillings and restructuring of principal loans amounting to 764.3 million shillings. Principal loans totaling to 268.2 million shillings will be converted to grants. The cabinet also approved the National Disaster Risk Management Policy, the Public Finance Management Regulations 2018 that are meant to guide the operations of the National Drought Emergency Fund. The cabinet also approved the proposed Public Finance Management Regulations 2018 that are meant to guide the operations of the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund. The cabinet also approved the proposal to restructure the aviation sector to restore Kenya's aviation competitiveness and make Nairobi the African civil aviation hub. Patrick Amimo, KTN News.
Let's now take you back to our top story, a developing story back to the Milimani Law Courts, where 20 out of the 50 suspected individuals, suspects in the 9 billion National Youth Service scandal were arraigned earlier today, and that has been ongoing until this very late hour. Let's take you back to our political affairs reporter, Jeff Kirui, who is there. And Jeff, we understand there have been some determinations. What can you tell us?
Well, very good evening, Ben. Right now, I have Cliff Ombeta, a lawyer representing Richard Ndubai and one more client. And of course, I understand that the state has applied to deny the suspects bail. Maybe the lawyer can explain to us more. Bwana Wakili, we understand that a state has made an application to deny the suspects bail. What do you make of that?
Yeah, there's an affidavit that has been signed by Chief Inspector Muya of CID Headquarters Economic Crime Section. And he has asked that the court denies bail the accused persons, saying that the accused persons are a flight risk and people who might interfere with witnesses. They are also people who might pose a risk to national security, as well as people might interfere with witnesses because of their influential positions. But of course, this is what they are going to do, and they're going to use that affidavit right now. But we are prepared for that because this is an offense that is bailable. And apart from that, the accused persons who now are here in court have been reporting every now and then for investigations whenever they've been called. So you can see that it's an effort just to frustrate the accused persons and not to honor their dignity under Article 28. But then the court it is quite clear that the bond terms the court might want to give might be strict, but the accused persons are entitled to bond. The state is actually just fishing for that particular purpose. Because what are they talking about national security? Where is that issue coming about? These people have not done anything. They are not the kind of people you can say they're terrorists. They're Al-Shabaab. They have bought weapons with that money, or they have done anything that can endanger the state. So national security is actually a wish that they are making.
What do you make of the charge sheet so far?
10 files. 10 files, which means 10 different sets of bonds. It's punitive. It is going to be hard. And this has been done maliciously by the state because they wanted maybe the accused persons to remain in custody, just to embarrass them further, because these charges could have been consolidated in one way or the other. And the moment you keep on putting many counts that are similar in different charges and different files, then the intention is quite clear that the state is hell-bent on trying to frustrate the accused persons coming out on bond and wanting to keep them in custody. It's a public relations exercise for them. And while it might give them mileage, it is... the remoteness of it all is that they are causing damage to the constitutional rights of the accused person, the fundamental rights of the accused person. And this we are going to fight to the hilt.
Will this be a lengthy case based on what we've witnessed today from 9 in the morning up to now?
Yes, and they're still reading the charges until now. So that means that it's going to be a lengthy case. And being 10 different files, that means 10 different courts. And then that means that 10 different days for every particular case. And therefore, you never know how long a case will take in which particular court. And that means we are going to be here for the long haul.
Yes. What happens after today?
After today, then we are now going to take dates for hearing. We are going to come for pre-trial so that we have given all the documents that they're going to use in this case and any other documentary evidence. And then from there, we'll see which courts we are given. We shall prepare then our case. And once our clients are out, we will fight.
Maybe one last question. Does it bring a concern to you that some of the charges are actually not brought before the court?
Yes, and you see, even some of the accused persons are not before the court. The state would want us to believe that these people are absconding, which is not true. You see, we wanted all the charges to be present, and we wanted all the accused persons to be present. Therefore, it means that if they're going to bring the other accused persons later on for any other files, then that means our clients who are here in court already will have to come back to court again and plead, and maybe new files will come in. And while they are bringing charges that are amounting to 780 million right now, what we have calculated in all the charges, when they talk of 9 billion, then you can start imagining what the hell are they talking about. This is totally incomprehensible. Totally. Yes.
There's also the issue about not including EACC in these cases. Is it a concern for you?
In fact, this was not a matter for Anti-Corruption Commission, because you see what I can say right now is this is not a matter for corruption, because they are not. It's not somebody who had been paid or received money not to do a particular duty, being a government officer, so that corruption comes in. It's a matter of whereby they're saying people are looting or stealing. So it becomes basically a normal criminal offense, which the DCI took over and ran away with it, and therefore, technically, the Anti-Corruption Commission not necessarily. It wasn't necessary for them to be included in this matter. But then the matter has been taken to Anti-Corruption Court. That is where we were wondering, then what is the use of bringing them to Anti-Corruption Court when you're not involved with the Anti-Corruption Commission? Yes.
Well, Ben, that has been lawyer Cliff Ombeta representing Richard Dubai and one more client. And of course, right now, there's another determination we are expecting regarding the issue about our warrant of arrest. Of course, we'll go in there and wait to see what kind of ruling will be given by Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti.